during all of our discussions this month, but also I felt like I owed them the opportunity to sort of talk to us, just the two of them, as opposed to coordinating all the wonderful animals that they have at their communities. So Ben and Casey, thanks a lot and welcome. And no background noise, no llamas and goats. We can hear you loud and clear. And you guys are on the porch of your Westminster property, correct?
Yep, we're here on our porch in Westminster. It overlooks the animal pasture where you saw us last week. And right now it's just absolutely beautiful out here. Great weather today. But thank you, Steve, so much for allowing us to share about what we do. You know, we're very blessed and fortunate to be able to work with residents each day and to share animals with them, share music with them, and just share love with residents.
Well, first off, where are your three? You've got three communities. Tell people where those are. What towns are they in?
Sure. So we have one in Westminster, Maryland, one in Lutherville, Maryland, and one in Linthicum, Maryland.
And
all in the Baltimore area.
Yep. And I'm just gonna, for those who haven't heard Ben and Casey's story, just kind of tell us your quick story again. What got you into this field and owning these three properties?
Sure. So we both have experience in consulting, a background in consulting and senior living, combined almost 50 years of experience. And we visited hundreds of communities around the United States and Puerto Rico. And through visiting those communities, we saw there was a lot of need for something better, something more engaging, something that just can give some more life to, especially in memory care for those suffering from dementia and Alzheimer's. And so we kind of brought that to life. It took a little while, but about 6 years ago, we started here in Westminster, and it's really been fantastic. Our mission that we set out was purpose, joy, and laughter were the three things we went after. You know, we each need a purpose, and that doesn't go away as we get older, and it doesn't go away if we have dementia or Alzheimer's. We still need a purpose, and we can all still have that sense of joy, and we can bring laughter into someone's life. So that's really our goal, to create success out of what they can do.
Great. And what I love is that being consultants for so many years, that you guys sort of had your notebook of the really cool best practices of all of these clients that you consulted with, and you've done a great job of throwing them all into your three properties. So, I truly, and I meant to do this before today's discussion, but I want to do an edit of the three sessions that we had where we met the baby chicks, the goats, and the llamas. And I'll send that out to everybody in the audience in case you missed it. It's absolutely awesome. So, guys, thanks so much, and I'll make sure to share your contact info, and we look forward to seeing you hopefully live here in the near future.
Sounds
awesome.
Great. Thank you so much, Steve.
Thank you,
All
Steve.
right, you bet. Okay, so let me take them down, and now I'm going to bring on our panel members today, and that's Pamela Teaster with Virginia Tech and the Center for Gerontology, and Bob Blancato, who is who's on the phone, who is an instructor in this new online certificate program that we're going to learn about today. But both of you all are true leaders and pioneers in the field of aging. So I hope our questions and topics range once we learn about the program. I'm hoping that we can have a little discussion about some of the things that both of you are passionate about. So welcome, Bob and Pam.
Thank you very much.
Great.
And
so
I apologize that I'm not doing this on Zoom, but we have a outage up here in Washington, D.C. of our Comcast service, and it's been almost 24. It'll be 24 hours before they restore it. So.
Oh man. Well, we've got a big group of our community is in the Washington D.C. area, so I'm sure that some of the people that are listening on their phone versus on Zoom are going through the same thing. So first, before we learn about the program, I'd love for our audience to get to know Bob and Pam a little bit better. Pam, you've got an awesome resume, but can you just give us a little bit of some of the high points and things that you'd want folks to know about, and how did you sort of land at Virginia Tech running their Center for Gerontology?
Sure, I'll cut to the chase. So I've always been drawn to issues of rights and healthcare and end of life. I really love to do very complex problems, but I also really have a great interest in what governments and nonprofits can do. So all that kind of became work that I did in both elder abuse and guardianship. So I've done probably as much work through the years on guardianship issues and surrogate decision-making issues as I have done on elder abuse. Virginia Tech, I just wrote a person. I went to Virginia Tech, got my PhD in public administration and public affairs and a certificate in gerontology, got hired there as a professor, was recruited to the University of Kentucky where I worked in their PhD program in gerontology, was the department chair for a while, but really just wanted to return to Virginia at some point because of family and friends here. So came back in 2014 and began to run the center in 2016, and then knew that we really wanted to have an online option. I met Bob through any number of ways, but particularly through when he was president and first vice president, were you, Bob, for the National Committee for the Prevention of Elder Abuse, and I think that's where our friendship began.
That's true. I think you're right.
Great. Yeah. And Bob, I mean, I think most of the people in our audience have seen your name at one time or another, whether it be on a White House Conference for Aging agenda, or, you know, the many conferences that you speak on. But just give us a little overview of your career, and then we'll dive in and learn more about what's going on at Virginia Tech.
Well, thank you, Steve. And you know, when you work as many years as people like Pam and I do, you know, encapsulating things gets a little trickier. So I think what I'm going to do is say that the consistent thing in my work background has been advocacy. I have worked on the inside for a number of years in the Congress, and as President Clinton's appointee to run the White House Conference on Aging. But then on the outside, when we went into business, we continued our work on advocacy for older adults by operating coalitions like the Elder Justice Coalition and the Defeat Malnutrition Today Coalition. And one of the reasons I was drawn to this class, in addition to the fact that Pam is the most persuasive person on God's earth,
I learned it from Bob. Whatever I've learned, I learned from Bob Blancato.
It would give me a chance to in a class setting to talk about advocacy and policy for interested students who hopefully will then become their own good advocates on behalf of causes. So I think that's probably what I'm most comfortable talking about and what I've given the most time and attention to over the years.
That's great. Okay, well, let's dive in first to Pamela, tell us a little bit about the Center for Gerontology at Virginia Tech, some of the things that you're involved with. I'm really, like, as I urge everybody to go to their website, because there's a couple of things, like, you guys are involved in some pretty cool research projects, and I noticed this one on the website about bank employee training to thwart financial exploitation. But just give us a 30,000-foot overview of the activities that the Center of Gerontology is involved in, and then let's talk about this new online certificate program, and then maybe Bob can give a us a little bit of overview of what he's doing in his class.
That'll be fantastic. So the Center for Gerontology is primarily a research center, and we have just world-class gerontologists, a whole group of us that do work on caregiving, on needs, unmet needs, that do work on elder rights and elder mistreatment, and do work on aging in place and livable communities. So we have just an array of that, and those are the core faculty. So that's 5 of us, and then out in the world and I just did this report yesterday for the university, 92 faculty affiliates who are all around the university doing something to do with aging, from the College of Medicine to agriculture to food, human nutrition, foods and exercise, to engineering, all those kinds of people. And then we have retired faculty, we have Friends of Gerontology, we have all sorts of that. So we have a futures board of about 17 different people. We have just an array of people. And then we have over 100 people who've gotten the seated certificate in gerontology. So really we have just a robust set of people and projects. Our work ranges from work on elder mistreatment, financial exploitation. That work you talked about, Steve, was with AARP. And then, and a colleague of mine, Tina Savla, was also on that project. She's one of our core faculty. We do work on trying to help with alcoholism and drug abuse. We've done some opioid work. I'm doing that with Bob and his friend Brian Lindbergh right now. So those are some of we really do a wide variety of projects because they come our way. They're interesting. We have expertise in them as well. So we have just we have Friends of Gerontology who are out in the state and out in other states that we have that are associated with us. So we're just one big wide research center. The online certificate, real fast, I will say, came about because we knew we were missing people who wanted to get a certificate in gerontology, wanted to get better training in it, but couldn't do it in a conventional classroom setting. So that is how we birthed the online certificate.
And you birthed that before this COVID-19 crisis.
We did.
Is a lot of foresight there. Great. And what I really commend your program in doing, it sounds like you guys have your tentacles in all the different schools there at Virginia Tech, so that if there's, sort of something going on in the engineering department, that there's a connection between the gerontology program, which is absolutely wonderful and really taking full advantage of being a large, well-known academic institution. So that's great, great. So, so now you started this online graduate certificate program, and this kicked off this fall, correct?
Yeah, yes, it did. We got approved about April. Bob's been waiting to finally get approved through university, but we did get approved late this spring, and then we jumped into trying to get trained to put it online, to figure out how we would do it, when would the first class meet, how would we promote, and so forth. So yeah, this is our inaugural course.
And so one of your inaugural instructors is Bob Blancato. So Bob, tell us a little bit about the course you're teaching, and what potential students can expect when they sort of join on. And I'm assuming, is Bob teaching every semester or every other semester? How does that work?
He will. Well, we haven't discussed that, but we hope Bob will teach that as often as we can offer the course, which would probably be about once a year or once a year and a half. We'll cycle through at least 2 more courses, which will be Ethics for an Aging Society. That will be in the fall of 2021. And then Organizational Leadership for an Aging Society will be in the spring, starting in January.
Great.
Well, I am very happy to be in the inaugural class. And I will tell you right off the bat, my favorite thing so far in this class have been my students. They're wonderful. They're great. They're engaged. And that's so important to this class. We made that very clear at the outset that we were going to have the most interactive possible class that we can. And our title of our course is Public Policy for an Aging Society. And what we're doing is walking through, starting at the local level and then the state level and ultimately the federal level, what policy is, how we get to that point, what's involved in policy, both in the making side of it and the implementation side of it. And we encourage the students to, and we started this last week actually, to lead part of the class each time around a topic in the broad area of aging policy and public policy in an aging society. And based on what we got in our first class, and I know which will follow, there's a great level of interest on the part of these students to both learn more about policy and then ultimately try to impact policy from whatever level they can. And so, for example, we will have courses that talk, classes that talk about federal aging policy, but I will add to that, as we did in our last class, there's a difference between federal aging policy and a national aging policy. I still contend after 30-some years in the field that we lack a national aging policy. We have components of it in both federal, state, and local policy, but we lack a coherent national aging policy, and we're now working to try to identify what elements should be in there, should we be in a position to push forward on a national aging policy. And we're also going to talk about the role of interest groups, who are disruptors of policy, and then we're going to close off with what we should close off with, which what impact has the pandemic had on present and future policy in an aging society. So we're very excited about how it's going so far, and this gives me a chance to work with students coming forward who may well be good advocates down the road.
Excellent. No, sounds like a fantastic course and a great way to kick off this certificate program. So Pam, we've got a few questions on, like, fundamental questions on, how much does it cost? How does tell us a little bit about the program. What do people get when they're done? Can they just take classes and some of those details?
You can, so you can take one class and not get the certificate. You can certainly just take a class that you'd like to. We'd like you, though, to have the certificate. And we're pitching this to people who know something about aging, but not so much about administration, and need to know that, need to have a global understanding, or people who who know a lot about administration, but don't know much about older people. So really, we're trying to get the sweet spot of people who really want to be professionals, and as Bob said, are advocates, or I think sometimes that's both. So that's really what we get. So it's a 4-credit certificate, and the hope would be that the capstone project, right now we'll offer a course a semester. It's our hope that the capstone project will be a value added to your organization. So that's really what we're hoping, and that would put the person who got the certificate in the next, at the next lily pad place. I think Carol Estes used to call that to me. So, the next lily pad hop that you want to make, or the next job that you want to have, that this gets you in really good position for that. I'm happy to send the fee schedule to anybody who wants it. It's right there on the website that you can see. And we are working, by the way, to pull those costs down. But we have to work through the Board of Visitors, and that's going to be this spring. So if you're a Virginia Tech student already, you've already paid for it. If you're taking the one class, we can show you the information on how to do that. And we offer a few scholarships to people. If you need them, we can probably offer you about a $500 scholarship to make the burden of the cost less than it is at the moment. Let's see, what else did I want to say? So all you have to do is, applying is very, very easy. So you can, and I want to say one more thing about these classes, because we are getting this sort of the Bob Blacato people, that we get the people who do the policy. That's what makes us unique. that we really have people in the field who are doing the work. So Bob and the others who are involved in it are what we call professors of practice. They're people who are involved in the work going on, and they're teaching about it because they do it. And what we are hoping to have when you would get a certificate from us in this area is you will have had the most outstanding leaders in the country.
Great.
I've never heard that term before. Professors of practice.
Professor of practice. They go on your CV, Bob. We get your T-shirt.
That's it. I need to wear that. So, Steve, I'm going to make a brief comment here. As I sent my note, I just realized I have to leave briefly to open another webinar right at 1 o'clock, and I will come back after my comments. So I'm on for about another 3 minutes. I'll jump off, do my comments, and come back. So we should be okay.
Yeah, sure. And Bob, if you don't come back, the point of just letting our audience know that you're involved in this program, that's fantastic. So
I plan to come back, but I know if you have questions, I always like to hear what people's questions are. So I'll do my best.
Okay, great. And we did have Amanda Earl asked for the link to the program. I added that into chat. Okay, so and now, guys, this is the time where if you've got questions for Pam or Bob or about the program, either type them into Q&A or raise your hand if you'd like to make a comment or if you have a question. You'd mentioned 4 credits, a 4 credit, and it's been a while since I've been in school, but it used to be, you'd take these 3 credit classes.
It's four classes of 3 credits.
Courses. So 4 courses make up the certificate.
Right.
And you've got, again, the areas, it's policy.
Right. You have organizational leadership for an aging society, ethics for an aging society, public policy for an aging society. And we did that for a couple of reasons. One, Bob had been waiting for like a year or 2 to teach this course, and we didn't want to lose him. We also realized we were in the COVID period. We just had jumped into that and we got approved. And secondly, it was an election year. Who would you not want but Bob to teach that course? So, I mean, it was just a no-brainer to have him teach that if he still could. And then organizational leadership for an aging society. We know now we're going to have Laura Sands, she is the editor for Innovation and Aging, to teach sort of the aging component of organizational leadership for an aging society. And then we are in negotiation with the person who's going to teach the leadership component about that. But if that works out, I'll know that next week sometime. That'll blow you away as a class member to have that individual if we can nail that down. I can tell you that I do know who's going to teach the fall course, Ethics for an Aging Society, and that would be Candace Heisler, who is an attorney in San Francisco, a longtime advocate for older adults, and Georgia Amitzberger, who I would say would be known to anybody who knows anything about social work, aging, rights, older adults. She is in Ohio.
Great.
She has worked with Benjamin Rose for many years.
Ken Silverstein asks, is there an exam test for each course or any other type of final paper exam?
Depends on what the instructor wants. Typically, they may have a project or they may have paper. It's kind of dependent on what the professor wants. We can ask Bob what he has been doing.
I'll tell you before I
do, Bob.
We put 5 categories in for the grade: activity, discussion participation for 20%, discussion forums for 20%. If you're leading a discussion, which every student will, that's 30%, and a final paper of 30%. And I come from the world that says you don't put too many burdens on people. So the final paper at most will be 5 pages in length, and it'll focus on some of the topics that we covered in the class. So no final exam, just a paper and a lot of discussion and leading discussions. That's what we like to do. And I will be back shortly.
Okay,
and
great.
At the graduate level, we tend to not do exams.
Great. Yeah, I know. For those of us that have been out in the workplace, it's sort of like the idea of taking any kind of exam is definitely intimidating. So the let's see, Sophia Ross asks, a capstone requirement was noted. Could you discuss in more detail what that might involve?
Well, that one really should be the culmination of the courses that you would take, and that would be student driven in that way. And then we would pull back on the people who had taught the courses before if they needed to help you or give you a little bit of advice about how to do your capstone. I'll probably be your capstone administrator in that way because I run the program. But the piece of that there is, this is your project that puts you in the next place, given the context that you will have had with these amazing people, if they can help you in any way. But your capstone project is value added to you and or your organization for the next thing, to the next level, the next project. So that's really very individual for the student. And and we would come up with a product. You've got to have a product, right? But you got to want to come up with the product that is most useful to you.
And when you talk about the product, that's either a paper, a presentation, or the deliverable.
Or a project, or to institute something, an evaluation, an assessment, something that really pushes you into in a better place with a product that you have done.
I always tell employers out there, when their employees are interested in any kind of continuing education, that it's just a gold mine for an organization. It's sort of encouraging that, because this is the opportunity where, your employees can come out of this with something better on their resume that helps them in the future. But the value, if they're working for you and they embrace a challenge that you have in your workplace as their capstone, they're now working on this on weekends and evenings, and it's like, and they're motivated. It's great stuff.
And you have us. I mean, the other thing is, at least you have the benefit of being able to tail back to the people who have worked with you to give you some advice on it, if depending on what you choose. So I mean, if you were working on a public policy project and you had Bob to look at something for you or give you a piece of advice, oh, holy cow, I mean, hasn't that placed you in a different position about what you're doing, or how would I disseminate this, or what's the next thing, or, I want to do X, do you know why? And so the beauty of this is that you not only learn things, and improve what you're doing, and have people who are really doing those things, and outstanding, I mean, nationally reputable people, but they're helping you and your organization move to a different place.
Yeah, no, that's great. Let's see, Susan Kimmel asks, when do you have to apply for the spring semester? Which course is being offered in the spring?
That's a good question. I'll have to look and see when registration opens. But the course will be Organizational Leadership for an Aging Society. So it's the Org Leadership Aging Society course, which will be the second one, and Ethics will be in the spring. It will be in the next fall.
Yeah, and in case you guys are there's probably a few people in the audience, they're like, Gurney, why didn't you tell us about this in like July? Okay, so we could have been in Bob's class in the fall. I learned about this like at sometime this summer and reached out immediately to these folks. What's interesting, I do see, I think I shared a press release, and I see one of your students, Carol Stadfield, in the audience. She immediately jumped on it and signed up, and she's really excited about being part of Bob's class. Ken Silverstein, who asked about the testing, said he just breathed a sigh of relief when he heard about it.
Most of us do. You do not have to be a tech student to apply. By the way, somebody asked that. You can be what we call a Commonwealth campus student. So because really, we want people from across the country. I mean, if we think big, we'd like them around the world. Yeah,
and the fact is, you don't need to do GMATs or any of that. You don't have to even find your college transcripts from 30 years ago, or do you?
I think I learned we got to have some proof that you finished up an undergraduate degree from
Okay,
somewhere.
all right. So,
For some of us, and I don't know how old everybody is on the chat, but for some of us, that's locked away in a cave, and you still have to pay to get it because they have to find it. So
Yeah.
that would be. I was taking a course. I started taking a course online in 2016, and much to my surprise, I had to go unearth my undergraduate transcript, and I think that took weeks for them to find because we weren't digitized at that time.
Let's see. Kimberly Ree asked. She got pulled out and was asking about on the content and the cost of the program. Kimberly, I'm putting the link in for you. It's also in chat. Martha Cooper says, how does the program address family dynamics regarding issues of aging? And I'm interested in your answer there, but also when I was preparing the promotion for this, I noticed that the Virginia Tech Center for Gerontology sort of breaks down your 3 streams of coordinated research into family gerontology, health and aging, and elder rights. Maybe you could speak on both of those on, family dynamics as well as sort of the overall focus of the center.
I think for one thing, all of us at the Center for Gerontology, all of us core faculty have our faculty appointments in the Department of Human Development and Family Science. So we really do a lot with families and caregiving. It would be carried on in each of those courses, more or less. I don't know how anybody would teach a public policy, an ethics, or an organizational leadership course without talking about family dynamics related to that. Particularly, I would say the sweet spot for those kinds of issues, however, would be in the ethics course, because so many of the family dynamics are ethical in nature and require a lot of understanding of people, their problems, how to be equitable, just, not doing any harm, promoting autonomy, creating beneficence, being honest and veracity, all those sorts of things. So I think it's permeated through each of these courses. There's not a family gerontology course here, but certainly it would be a component of them all.
Great. I love it. And I think one of the things, like a lot of our audience is, we're kind of the feet on the street, managers, leaders, we're dealing directly with the consumers. And one of the things that I can't emphasize more is that having an understanding of these upper level, like national, regional, municipal policy, just how that rounds out your kind of appreciation for the resources and what it takes to serve older adults. It's really a great feather in your hat. So
right.
Sounds
and I guess I want to say, I think this certificate really speaks to that audience, because the very reason we created it was knowing there was this gap in a certificate for people who were wanting to working with older people. Not necessarily like we have our seated course, which is much more for people who are going to be professors or researchers like me, but people who are actually out there doing it. And that's why we wanted to bring in this kind of person, like a Bob, like a Candy Heisler, like a Georgia Anitsberger, who have like run area agencies on aging, work with politicians, made law. In fact, I've got to write Bob, because I've got to ask him how do you make your opening statement to go in the congressional record, because Bob knows this. I do it rarely, but I got to email him after I finish this call to say I need a copy of something he's done so I know the right way. That is invaluable to have, and that will not be something necessarily a college professor will know, because we don't do that often. Bob,
well, I want to hear, if he jumps back on this call, I want to hear his sort of elevator speech on how you actually do that. That's really interesting. So maybe you could ask him the question if he gets back on.
That would be great. I mean, he knows how to do that, and he's just one of the best. He has advised me on when I have given testimony, like he does, of the things to say, and and of course he would know that a college professor is going to go long, right? And he's like, you cut this off, you cut this off, you cut this off. You sit over here, don't go in the room and get anxious. You know, you look like this, you know, you have this posture. This is what you do.
That's cool.
Plus he can work with people. I mean, I think you'll find that's true for all of them. They can work with people in wonderful ways. So they're fantastic models of how to negotiate, the knowledge that they have, how to present themselves, the issues that they've confronted, because they have confronted them, you know, and that's why a professor practice is such a gem to have.
Yeah. Sharon Lucas, just reiterating what test scores are required for the application. None. Just you need to validate that you've got an undergraduate degree.
Right. Right. And you'll see the requirements too on the website. We should have packaged everything there. So it's easy to be, and I can tell you who it's coming to. It's coming to me.
Okay.
Go
well,
on.
that's good. Yeah.
So if you're wondering who it goes to, it really will finally funnel to me.
This is a good question here from Barbara Sullivan of the Village to Village Network. This certificate appeals to many people that have had lifelong careers, but now are working in senior serving organizations, such as the Village Movement. Is there a senior discount? Are there classes during the day or evening?
All right, good question. So there would be a discount for older adults based on the sort of Education Act for older adults, and I'll have to get you information about that. But all older adults are able to attend university classes at a reduced rate, and so I can help you with that piece, but I'll do it offline. And then when is the course offered? That's a really great question, and we struggled with this one. That these courses, because you are taught synchronously, meaning in the time. If you know, why would you have a Bob and just have him do PowerPoint with a voice overlay? You just are going to miss the important piece of the interaction. So the courses are taught at the same time, because that's the piece. And I think Bob does his about 6 o'clock at night. So it's in the evening time, because we know that people work during the day, and you know, he does it one night a week, and I think he does it every other week. So, but it's typically in night, because we want to be able to accommodate people on the West Coast or different time zone. You know, if you could get off a little early or do your lunch hour and then take the class, that's how you'd manage it. But it's not going to be in the daytime, because that's when people are working. So we're trying to appeal to that group of people.
Well, the you know, and I'm glad Barbara Sullivan asked this question, because it was one of the reasons why I wanted to see if we could get Bob on a call, is because he is actually one of the presenters at the Village to Village conference.
Oh, wow.
And he'll be speaking on October 20th. And when we follow up with everybody, I will send you a link. If the Village to Village conference is sold out, I mean, it's over 600 village people are going to be attending this. But we've got a late registration link that if you wanted to join in and be a part of this 3-day educational series, that you can do that. So I'm glad Barbara's on the call, and was a reminder for me to sort of share. If you want to get an hour of Bob, at least on October 20th, you can attend that conference. Let's see. It looks like we've got through most of the questions here.
I was going to say to anybody who's got more specific questions that can't be done in this little time, all you have to do is email me. And I think all you have to do is Google that to find it, but I'll be happy to put that in the chat to everybody, my email address, and you are most welcome to contact me, and we'll get back with you. So I'll just do that right now.
Yeah, and I'll send out your contact information, given that you volunteered that, and that'd be great. So for our remaining time, Pamela, tell me, like, some of the things that are on your radar that, as you know, somebody who is deep into sort of older adults from a higher ed point of view, like, is there a particular research project that you've either done or you're involved with that you think that our audience might be kind of interested in either the results or sort of what's going on?
I'll speak for my own, although I want to talk about another one too. And the reason I'm going to talk about it is because I just finished them. So they'll be the most recent in my mind. One of the ones that we just finished and we've been working on for 2 years and we feel really good about it, honestly, was with the Social Security Advisory Board. And this board is advisory to the Social Security. It's a federal government agency. You may not know about it. We finished a 2-year study on representative payees and the selection of them for older adults. We went around the country talking to people who worked in the Social Security Administration. We talked to representative payee organizations to try to understand how that selection took place and what were good things about it and what things could be improved. So we just gave presentations on that last week, both Wednesday and all day on Thursday. And I am just really pleased with the work we did. Laura Sands was on that project, and I don't know how many of you would know Erica Wood. She was the former assistant director of the assistant executive director of the American Bar Association Commission on Aging. But we three worked together on that for 2 years, and we are really proud of that work. In fact, they just gave me this shawl. They just sent me this shawl yesterday, or not, but throw yesterday, and I just absolutely adore it. So I was thinking of them as I was looking at my picture. Then this week, we just got off to the Administration for Community Living, a project that we did with WIRMA Incorporated on the effects of how COVID has affected the functioning of adult protective services programs throughout the country. And we're really proud of that too. That just got to them on Monday. So that's a good feeling.
Yeah, that is really timely and really interesting. Any sort of, I'm curious, like what are some of the conclusions of how this pandemic affected APS?
Well, in the beginning, the big word would be face-to-face, no surprise, because a hallmark of the work they do is a face-to-face visit, and simply that in most instances they were not able to do that. The other piece was in the beginning, their report numbers went down. Most of their report numbers went down because there were not the eyes and ears of people seeing or suspecting that person could be abused, neglected, or exploiting or self-neglecting as there would have been. Once some of the lockdowns eased, then the reports started coming in. In fact, there was kind of a pent-up demand for adult protective services. And so, that was one of the pieces. The other was big concerns that they had over infecting others being infected, having enough PPE, having enough cleaning supplies. These were all sort of issues. And then, of course, the lessons that they learned, such as, working remotely in some respects is a real gift. The other piece was, if you don't have the right IT to do work remotely, then, it's not a good scenario, because if people are not set up to do that work, they can't. And so time gets lost with doing that. But I think, for APS, the face-to-face visit is so important because you all can see, where I am, but you have no idea what else is going on in my house. You have no idea about the dog. You have no idea about my 11-year-old who couldn't get on Zoom this morning for class, who was in tears. You missed my husband coming in asking if if I could help him with a phone call later because he doesn't have the number. That's all over there. And that's true for anybody. That's true for anybody. Social Security Advisory Board, that was another piece of how important it is for them to see a beneficiary, a potential beneficiary, and the person who's going to take care of their finances face to face, and learn best practices. So those are just two of them. My colleagues work on a really wonderful project called CARES. I can't tell you the title of it right now, but I can tell you what they look at. Appalachian Caregivers is what it's about, and they have interviewed hundreds of people and over time to try to understand what caregivers in the Appalachian area are doing. And COVID is just another example of that, although I was reminded this morning of one of the interviews that they had where a woman said, Honey, we've been doing that all the time. We've been quarantined all the time because I can't get out because I got to take care of the person I'm caregiver for.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is sort of, when all this started, I basically, one of my little sort of aha moments is we are now getting to feel what it's like to truly like age in place and live in a community where, for those of us that were all out and about and you're, you know, on campus, you're in your office, you're at the gym, what have you. Now, for most of us, we're just like we're living in an assisted living. We're in the same place all day long. We're inside, you know, participating in activities. We're getting all excited about what's for dinner tonight. And hey, if we
That's
can,
right.
if we can walk the dog around the block, that's a great thing.
Yep.
So my feeling is there's a lot more empathy in the public zeitgeist, or whatever you want to call it, about isolation and aging and living. But as you'd mentioned, you know, Appalachia and rural areas, you know, they've been facing challenges way before the COVID-19 challenge. So now, just out of curiosity, a study like that, like, or maybe like, I think that the reason I was drawn to your bank study is because you can sort of see the practical application that, okay, we're doing this research and we've identified the areas where fraud is occurring in banks, and you can see where any bank taking that research project is going to be more efficient and more profitable and have better customer service going down the road. Like for a academic research project, like studying at the Appalachian residents, like, is there sort of an organization that gets behind this because they've got a problem to solve, or how does that work in academics?
It really comes to us in very different ways. For the Bank Safe Project, AARP put out a request for proposals of people who would be interested and capable of doing the research with them. They had created the program. It was an online bank training. And so I submitted a proposal to AARP from Virginia Tech to see if they would let us be the partner. And so we were chosen from whomever else sent proposals in. Some of our work is funded by the National Institute on Aging because, you know, it fits within the work that the feds do. Some of our work is from ACL, for example, because the APS work fits what, you know, is funded through Adult Protective Services, which is some of which is under ACL at the federal level because of the Elder Justice Act. And so that's where that funding comes from. Some of it, you know, so it really is it depends on what the projects are. We're finishing up a project right now from the retirement. So clearly the feds, you know, all of you on the call, the Social Security Advisory Board funded the work that we did on representative payees that was just recent. But then we also do private nonprofits. The Retirement Research Foundation has funded some work that we're finishing up on on surrogate decision maker perpetrators. Well, it'll probably not be a surprise to anybody on this call that really what we're finding, we did this work through Adult Protective Services in 6 days. What we're finding is the perpetrators are powers of attorney. If they're powers of attorney, that talks about many different sectors. And who will pick that up? Well, I expect a lot of people, even law firms, Department of Justice, because that's a problem. And I know many people on this call know that, but it wasn't validated in research. So we're funded by a variety of things that look like they could fund us to do this work, and sometimes we just fund ourselves because we have university funds to do that. We're working with Consumer Voice and Laurie Smetanka to do a parallel track study of how has COVID affected the work of the long-term care ombudsman across the country. So we're doing.
I just want to jump in. I was able to get back.
Bob, you're back.
I'm
Switch
sorry,
Bob.
took longer than I thought, but here I am.
Well, that's great. Well, hey, Bob, and we're kind of winding down, guys. So get in any of your last minute questions or comments. But Bob, I hope I'm not putting you on the spot, but Pamela said she was going to be contacting you offline to ask you a question. And I was sort of like, I would really be interested in hearing Bob's response to that, albeit probably not as detailed. But Pamela, you can do a better job of sort of articulating what you wanted to get some feedback on Bob on.
Oh, Bob, I got to do some testimony like we did last year, and I wanted to get a copy of your speech so I could see how you started.
But,
Well, you acknowledge. I got to get. I want to ask you for a copy. That's what I was going to do. I was saying there are very few people I can ask about that.
Yeah, but Bob, I know that I'm putting you on the spot here, but I'm just kind of curious, like, because from time to time, people in our community do get asked to testify. It's sort of like, what's your sort of when you're put in a position like that, what are some of your sort of coaching techniques to individuals?
Well, if it's a congressional testimony, and pretty much most federal testimonies, the first thing you have to learn is how to say everything you want to say in 5 minutes, period. No matter how big the topic is, no matter how many dissertations there may have been done on the topic, you have 5 minutes. And there's usually a light that tells you when that 5 minutes is up. So the most important thing you want to be able to do is make your points in that 5 minute period. That's also during the time when the members of Congress or the people in the agencies who are there are in the room as well. I also think, and I would add that you have the right to submit a longer testimony in advance, but it's that 5 minute opportunity that you must take advantage of, because if it doesn't, if you don't get your points in by then, you've really missed that opportunity. So, we determine in testimony, and obviously your 5 minutes have to also include the reason they invited you. You just can't go off on a 5 minute thing on something that's not related to the topic of the hearing. So those are the main points that I have that I've learned, and it's a nerve-wracking process, to be honest with you. I mean, because you practice. I've done it so many times, and I still sit in my conference room and run through it, and I bring a stopwatch with me, and I'm at 5 minutes and 10 seconds, and I get nervous because somehow when you actually start speaking it, something always happens. Okay, it ends up going faster than you think. So you actually have more time than you think, but you don't think that way. So that's why you got to make sure you get your points in early. That's the main I would give. So
as a follow-up to that, you've done this many times. What would you sort of credit as your best success story with a testimony related to a topic that might intersect with the aging world?
I would like to think twofold in nature, both in the one in nutrition and one in elder abuse. And actually the one in elder abuse prevention is, Pam alluded to it before. I was testifying before an appropriations committee subcommittee that funds the Department of Health and Human Services. And we were talking about elder abuse, but raised the new issue of the relationship between the opioid crisis and elder abuse. And I remember distinctly the members of Congress who were in that room looked up when I brought that topic up, because we had done a survey of adult protective service agencies in 4 states, and they came back and said they'd seen double-digit increases in elder abuse reported cases caused by the misuse of opioids by individuals, and then impacting the older adult who became the victim of abuse. So that led to a meeting that followed 2 weeks later in the Department of Health and Human Services, and it led to some funding that Congress approved for work in that particular area. The second place that I think we made a difference in is in the nutrition program for older adults. And we were making the point about how you save considerable amounts of money for programs like Medicare and Medicaid if you invest in older adult nutrition. And so not so much testimony, but when this pandemic began, we got phone calls from members of Congress offices saying, what can we expect to happen on the ground with older adult nutrition programs with this pandemic? So we canvassed our folks on the field, and they came back and said, we can anticipate the rapid closure of senior centers, adult day centers, any place where a congregate meal would be served. And that will incur these folks having to become home delivered meal recipients. That's going to add to our costs. That's going to add to our workload. It's going to add to a lot of things. So we were asked to provide them with a number for a 2-month period of how much they thought it would be. And we came up with a number. A number of colleagues and I did that. That number was $250 million, and that was included in the Family's First bill. But it came about, and I told it to my class, it came about because that's advocacy. When you could go to people and get information on the ground and convey it to policymakers, it can make a big difference. So those two things, I think, are my things I remember the most.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And when you referred to the Congress people looking up on the opioid topic of opioids, I guess for a lot of us, if we are put in a position of testifying, whether it be federal or local, just getting used to the fact that your audience may not be that attentive to your topic. So anyways, well, guys, it's 1:30. I really appreciate you jumping on this discussion with us. And I'm really excited about our audience spreading the word about what's going on at Virginia Tech. And I will follow up with everybody and give you contact info, and we'll see you all out there.
Thank you, Steve, for giving us this opportunity.
Great. Thanks.